Yeah, just initial, we want to decide.
Okay, I can do that.
Everything's okay?
Okay. My husband.
We're in the middle of winter, huh? Yeah.
Anybody need any cup too? This is anybody need any cup too?
So has it been like this ever since he had the treatment, or did he recover for a while and then?
I'll keep him on the floor for 3.
Well, sure, I had no idea.
Yeah, he was home, he was up there for 18 days. Yes. He came home for about a day and a half, and then, I took my husband back up there, and he said, another day, then I went home, and I knew he needed to have to get out.
Much better job.
Well, he fell on Saturday and his brothers came in and he said, I'm Monday, he really so, he was out and between I knew he was out, we had a all the and he's been there 2 weeks, but he's.
Any improvement?
And he's got terrible eating, his legs and his feet. And so he's just,
Well, the lack of activity doesn't come with that, right?
yeah, and that's just, he says he's doing exercise, but anyway, we go to Dr. Avenel.
Do you see any?
Dr. Avenel, downtown? She lied. Oh,
She
he is fabulous.
We got a referral from Jason.
Well,
She had
It's
same contact with her proteins and bone marrow, just amyloidosis.
oh,
And
and he's, yeah, he does all
that's
that.
another specialty stuff, so, yeah.
He's very well known in the world, they say,
Yeah.
for this. You know, they say my husband's age. That most people that get it
Well, I guess it was, the ones I guess we'll talk about.
So anyway, I was really
Sorry, I should have asked. I guess, I thought you had the treatment, he was just.
No, well, he did.
No, I know.
It's very
We're good through that. Yeah. I
a waterproof piece.
And I really want to find coffee. So he started that one.
So he's just a shell of
Threw
himself.
up now. And his skin's just hanging off of him. And
I also found out your receipt.
on Thursday.
But he's gonna have to find, I mean, I hope the doctor will, he's gonna find some will.
You can sign your names.
What are you gonna convict us of this time?
I'm not going to convict you of anything. We want to know that you were here, Joe. It's very important.
That new truck here is a Honda.
I signed his name for
Is it
Did you?
a Honda?
Ghost.
Yeah. I didn't know they were making a bigger version. Yeah. We're trying to think of something smart, so they just have come up with it. No.
arguing with me, and I showed the areas in the ordinance, and they said, well, we'll just have our attorney look over this.
Okay.
And I said, okay. And I said, it's available on the website, or, I can print it off, but it's in some copies, so,
And was that last week?
yeah. I just wanted to make sure I had all the
No,
ammunition
yeah.
out before, that's all I found, I was just making sure I didn't.
Yeah, it's not a whole lot. It's not referenced very much, but I don't think that it's open to much interpretation. I think it kind of says what it says.
What are these audits?
Is that for the state board of accounts audit? Is that your cost for the audit?
That's,
We have to pay.
we've got more bills today with the audit.
You have to pay them audits?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes, something.
that, and that is the general fund audit, or either they will take that out of the property tax check.
No, there's a word that they're going to, it was a picture of when it started, requiring that it be done by private contract. We'll have to, of course, you're paying the state anyway, so but eventually they'll eliminate that and we'll contract with third party auditors to conduct the audits. And but, yeah, like I say, you're paying the state already.
Yeah.
How much did that turn, how much did that is around like 4 million?
Not as much as they say. I just got another bill, I'm more concerned with we get the money here.
Yeah, yeah, we got
Day to
to
day. Trying to get more money.
But that's keeping him from just keeping on having.
Oh, yeah, it's ready to go, it
Okay,
is.
good. But was it 10,000 or
Oh,
7,000?
no, it wasn't that. It wasn't that.
You need to sign those or I don't?
Gosh, I can't.
That's okay, I just kind of
I don't, wasn't near what they said.
Good.
Two
Good.
things.
That was a nice surprise.
Because it didn't take.
That's mine.
It didn't take as long as they.
Yeah, that's good.
thought.
Yeah, that's a nice added benefit.
All right.
Wouldn't let it move into city.
I think I saw I think I saw a black SUV.
Is there? Is there?
I saw a black SUV just a second outside.
Here.
Connor's got it, because it's, Connor's is running, but.
I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I'd like to welcome everyone to the April 9th, 2018 County Council meeting. Stand for pledge allegiance.
Guts, there it is. My mercy.
You're up.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Sharon, you noted that council members are present. And, I think first order of business is, Sharon, I think we're going to financial.
Approval of the minutes.
Yeah, need to approve it. So we need to,
How'd you?
You late.
approve the minutes.
Of March 12th and the March 19th meeting.
Council, I have any problem with the minutes? Motion,
I make a motion to approve
a second.
March's minutes.
All in favor to approve the minutes?
Sign those, please.
We need to make a motion to approve the docket dated April 9th, 2018, totaling the $120,016.17.73, the total expenses last month. So I need a motion for that.
I'll make a motion.
I need a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Concerning the financials, the general fund balance is $244,144.93. The MVH balance is $96,050.60. And then the total for all those funds within the general fund is $623,414.89. The balance for the water operating is $115,114.12. Wastewater operating is $2,234.40. And stormwater is $12,061.84. Does anyone have any questions about those reports? Okay, if not, I'll send this docket around for your signature. And three other invoices here that need to be passed, approved. It came in after the docket was printed. The first one is for the fire extinguishers with Barbara Pros Incorporated. And the second one is to Netlock for $456.49. And to Water Solutions for $13.50, which will possibly be reimbursed to us by the SRF because we had some extra money. That extra money from Westler that was, they returned to us and we returned to the SRF. They may allow us to use that money for the solutions that we have to buy for the water. The SRF money.
Two of them were at their,
Yeah.
chemicals that
Mhm.
just for operation.
So I need a motion to approve payment of these 3 invoices.
Make the motion we approve.
These 3 invoices.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then the payroll for March.
Did you say 3?
Yeah.
Oh, this one's here.
That, yeah.
Okay. Maybe go 4 pages.
Yeah, we need to make a motion to approve the payroll for March 2018.
Make a motion to approve the payroll for March 2019.
Any second? All in favor?
Aye.
And then finally, the approval of the bank reconciliation for March bank statements. Has everyone had a chance to look at those?
All right, we need an approval for the reconciliation for March 2018. We need to make a motion.
I make the motion to approve that.
All members in favor?
Aye.
And we did payroll, didn't we?
Yeah.
Okay, well, we need to send this along to the signature. And then, I'll do this on that. That's the reconciliation.
I love that.
Courtney. Okay, if we're caught up with that, so you got an adjustment, Becky?
Yes, I just have one this month. The amount requested is $13.22.
I need a motion to approve that adjustment.
I make a motion to approve that.
1322, any second? And all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. DPW.
Oh, already?
Okay, my error on time, in front of you are, or, I don't know, it's exactly in front of you, the resume for Jones was applied. Jesse Jones is 31. He's originally from Mary's family. His dad is Jack Jones, which his grandfather, you might know as Jack Jones, who lived in the white house here on Sycamore Street. His mother is Connie Adams Jones, which is Carolyn Bill's daughter. And you can tell his resume is he's very well qualified. He would in turn turn out to be our wastewater operator. Again, I apologize that he's not here. He's supposed to be here at 7.
interview him, and I was scary, his credentials.
Why is he leaving Burgersville?
Pardon?
Why was he leaving Burgersville?
Bargersville just, I mean, not, I don't know.
I called his superior and talked to him. He said, I can't discuss that. He said, but it's nothing, it's just history now, it's nothing, it's gone, and I promised I wouldn't discuss that. He said, but if I could possibly ever swing it, he would be back here working for me.
That's a good thing.
And that, his superior is Mr. Reynolds, Bill Reynolds. I've known him many years. And it's just, he said that's just something between them, and he just didn't want to divulge it. It wasn't anything to hurt his job ethics or his job quality or his, anything about his person. Just something that they want to keep between themselves. That's as far as I can go with it. They told me, and that's their privilege.
I can convey that, I mean, Brian Clark, the other supervisor, one of them, and, which the Trafalgar guys are familiar with him too, and, it was just a matter that had nothing to do with, the way I understand it, nothing to do with his job performance or anything like that. So, it's just something that, don't care. I mean, I don't care, he seems all right to me, and like I said, the reflection of his job performance and everything was not an issue whatsoever, so, you know, neither lie, that's nobody's business.
I expect that there's something that maybe every one of us has done something sometime would just soon not be public knowledge. And, I have. And, if I haven't, I probably will. But
The
anyway,
job
this-
description had no access to any monetary purposes or money or anything like that, so.
do you have a copy of his, you want to read through a little bit of his,
Well, everybody has a copy of it.
I mean,
Well,
Oh.
Are you so self-centered? You just-
No, what do I?
yeah.
He's a certified operator, he's worked for Bargersville since, let me break it down here, because he started out at Summerhill.
2009.
Just at Summerhill, in 2011, 2014, he worked on road patching, snowing, leaves, debris, collection, street sweeping, assisted water department fixing water leaks and water taps, and assisted all other departments as needed, which obviously is something we need. And it looks like in July of 2014, he got promoted to assistant plant operation manager, including but not limited to laboratory testing, lift stations, pump maintenance, the SCADA system, sanitary sewer inspection, plant maintenance, back truck operations, heavy equipment operations, including backhoes and skid steers, and that pretty much is what he did. So he's done all the courses, and he is aware that, I mean, and he's seen that we're not like Bargersville where they have to have a full-time operator just specifically assigned to the plant, that there would be other duties which consist of the previous things I mentioned, which would actually, I informed it, would be the majority of his time, because fortunately for us, our plant is very low maintenance as far as the testing and everything like that. We test a couple times a day and then take our samples up, and we don't, Franklin tests ours, we don't have the laboratory equipment to test them, which is time consuming, so that we don't have to do any of that. And he lives in, he was living here, he lives over off of Stephenport, where that was off of Sycamore Street. He currently lives in Trafalgar right now, married, and I know of at least one child. I don't know about another one.
Yes,
Two, okay, 2 children. And again, like I say, he is in intentions are to be here at 7. So if.
No problem with driver's license or anything?
No, he's actually got a class.
Okay.
No.
That's a plus.
Well, yeah, that's pretty much
Yeah, you
it.
have a good driver's license.
Well, I was having one,
Yeah,
that's kind of the key there. Unless we gave him a golf cart, I guess.
no. It's got to be valid. But no, he kind of recommended from his driver, and like I say, even though like Mike said, the previous supervisors they had even recommended him, so.
Well, I've known that the manager up there, Bill Reynolds, for years, and it just amazed me. He said, Mike, he said, you know me forever. He said, you couldn't make me lie to you if you held a gun on me. He said, and if I could get him back, I would in a heartbeat. He said, I was training him and prepping him to take my place, and he's the manager. So,
That's good news.
except the council needs to make a decision on that. So, we're have to make.
It's my choice. You guys
Do I have a motion on that?
can see.
Oh, no, you go ahead.
Okay, well, yeah, on his pay, we're not out anything.
Oh, yeah.
We're not out anything. He was an operator that got paid $22 an hour there. You figure our previous employee was paid 16. The operator that we were used was paid, equaled out to be $6 and something an hour, so it's a wash. It's a wash.
So what we gonna pay?
22. And we're not
using him anymore because.
We're not adding any more financial burden to our salary, none at all.
Okay.
See, the money we were paying for the
Operator,
operator's license
Oh.
and the treatment and the test.
well, I did test, so we're not out anything, it's all operating.
Wastewater.
He's supposed to be here, so-
Oh, yeah, it's continuing to do this. That was.
So you know Jackie, shouldn't you? Tina, you know
I'll
Tina.
probably do if I see his face.
Okay. Well, that's good. That's a good trade.
You know, I don't know what's up with truck.
That worked out well.
No, I know there's not.
His wife's got a truck.
I'd like to meet him before I retire. He's supposed to be here.
Let's hold off for the motion and everything, see if he shows up.
That'd be important.
Yeah, I won't be sure. Not goes to employee or anything.
Okay.
We've got you, Joe.
Okay, that was that, okay. We got the payment figured out where there was confusion on the $120,000 that was granted, and the bid was $145,000. We are covered by that. The $120,000 is the state match. Ours is the 25% additional to that, so it's already been budgeted, so there's no, it falls within the parameters, so as long as the contract is, as long as everything's good there, we don't need anything, so we don't need to look for any money.
You're talking about the pay, we're gonna.
Yeah.
As long as everything that's right.
Oh, yeah, it's a.
Well, I'm just saying, I just know that man, prices are going up big time.
No, that's a binding contract. If I'm wrong, yeah, that's a binding contract. I got the note.
They are a lot higher than last year, and I think we were smart to get a jump on it early, because I think as the contractors bid on more and more jobs, they're going to, the sort of supply demand kind of thing is, I think the prices are going to keep going up, and I don't know what oil prices are. So I think we're fortunate to be at the beginning of this paving season.
Yeah, well, even storm pipe is going on rates.
Is it?
Any type of pipe is going through the roof.
So, and I can just talk about this now. I reviewed Wallace Construction's bid. They were the lowest bid. You didn't take any action at the last meeting because we wanted to make sure we understood whether we had enough money or not, or whether the NDOT would supplement with any more, and that's not an issue,
No,
as Jeff just reported. So I think it is a responsive bid. It was the lowest of the two. I have a notice of award to send out and a contract for Mike to sign if you go ahead and accept the bid and award the contract tonight, which I mean, I think I have to at this point because we have this money to spend, and we have to get to NDOT by April 16, 15.
50%, yeah, but I'm hoping we'll get it in the first.
Yeah, like this week, but we have to get to them by, within the next week, either the signed contract or the accepted bid to meet the condition of us getting our grant money. So we really do have to do something with it tonight, and we're on the clock. And if you want to do that now, that's fine. If you want to wait till a later meeting. I mean, the action that you need to take is a motion to award a motion to accept the bid from Wallace Construction for $140,418 and to award the paving contract to Wallace and authorize Mike to execute it.
Well, I'll make a motion to accept it.
I'll second
To
it.
accept the Wallace bid, for the 140,000,
For 418.
418. We got the motion, we got the second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Like Greg had mentioned earlier, and this is another issue I've got, and we're just, I don't know what route you want me to take on this, because, I mean, obviously, the storm drain fund is fairly new, although it's starting to get a little healthy, but it's not. One of the paving projects is Maple Street, which is down by Grant Street. If you go down there after it's rained and everything, we've got drainage issues down there. Everything comes off of that hill, and it'll drain in 2, 3, 4 days after a good rain. One idea is a couple of catch basins scattered there, probably maybe about 60 or so feet east of Grant on Maple, and then tunneling it, piping it to, there's a ditch on the west side of Grant. Again, that needs to be cleaned out too, to do that. This is just something we need to think about, because, I mean, like I say, like I'm going into it here, I don't know how you want to get involved in that, because Maple Street isn't going to last 1, 2 winters at the most without rain, and if it gets, freezes and thaws and freezes and thaws, it's just not going to be any good. I'm going to do some checking, but I just wanted you guys to be aware of that location, and also over here at Sycamore and Highland, there's a basin on the southeast corner of that. We tried jetting it, we tried using a fire truck. It won't unplug, and plus, on the other side, on the west side of that intersection, the southwest corner, there's evidence of a continuous drain, which, again, it's all clay, and it's crushed and cracked and everything else, which continues west. You've seen all that water draining down through there, which has been for some time. That whole length is going to have to be replaced too. And there we're in the same scenario. Sycamore Street is one of the streets that's going to get paved, and we're going to have issues with it come next winter if we don't figure out some way to address that. So with that in mind, I'm going to talk to the engineer we hired for the wastewater. I think sure give you some ideas and thoughts on just off the cuff with Curry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just have to report feedback on that when I get there. When everybody else is up, I believe that's two mounting issues that we're gonna have to deal with, because if we're spending this money on these roads and paving, we're gonna have to make sure they drain properly. I will be probably Saturday, weather permitting, because I can only get one CC worker during the week, because everybody else has it, but I'll be working some on Saturdays where I can get 3 or 4 CC workers, and my intentions are to get a jump on the lagoon, so I didn't not on us about the way the banks look, the dikes look, and everything, so try to get the growth knocked down from that, plus we've got the spoilers over there, but we do have some good gravel with asphalt in to pick out, just to use it to save us money on the 52, also I'll be working a few Saturdays too, so I can get the extra help to do that. And then I'll get some probably during, which we'll have a meeting before the parade, so I'll just talk about that then. The youth league called me today in my car to ask permission to make sure that it was all right for them to buy some paint, and they will paint the dugouts and he said the press box. They're buying paint and they're doing the labor. That's another thing that I'm going to use the workers for is to clean up the park, all the sticks and trash, and get it ready. At least the park part, those guys obviously work on the field and prep the field. So I just want to make the council aware of that that they're going to do that, and make sure it's all right with the council, and it doesn't need a vote, but I just make sure they involve at the park, but at least they were contacting me, at least to get a heads up on. So.
Motion on that?
No, that's not necessarily the motion. Okay. Other than that, that's it until Jesse gets here, and I think Jeff's got most of the park information that we wanted to discuss along that same lines. That's what I'm turning over to see how that's happening. He will be responsible for that. Yeah. So we'll see.
What was that?
Well, was inquiring about contract.
Oh, the contract. Well, let's just talk about the contract since we're on that. We did a draft form from the Princess Lake contract. Courtney was so kind to help us do that. And then we worked in some of the things that DPW wanted in there, and some of the other requirements that are typical of a contract between a public park and Little League and whatever. And I sent that final our draft over to Courtney, and then I think we were going, once we got it in this kind of form, we were going to send it to Lee and let Lee go through it and make sure that we've got all the I's dotted and T's crossed, and if there's anything that Lee wants to make sure that we say a certain way that it's in there, because I think that was a 2011 contract from Princess Lake or something that we kind of went by, and so some of the information is a little outdated, but anyway, I said it to Courtney, and I just asked her, that's what the whisper was about, if the draft was at some point in time ready to send to Lee.
I think I saw one word where you put may, and I think we should put shall, but that's literally all I saw. Everything else looked, I think, because you got what you wanted in there, right? That's what I wanted to make sure, since a lot of responsibility falls on you, that you had your say as far as what the expectations would be during the season. And I think that's. And we really we took a lot of that, Jeff took a lot of that responsibility on the DPW that Princess Lake maybe didn't. And there were some things in there that we probably went ahead and took responsibility for, but we didn't put any figures in there. It does talk about a $200 deposit when the keys, because we need to make sure that we get the keys back. I know there's been times where we've gone down there in August and September, and the air conditioner's still running. And we've gone down there and we've followed up on burglary reports and theft reports, and where they've left
retail items in there, you know, candy and retail items. And in the contract, it specifically says, you know, during the period of time, and we went from, I think March 1st or April 1st to August 1st or something like that, and it takes pretty much the Little League season encompasses a few weeks before and maybe a few weeks afterwards, after that. So anyway, we were pretty open with it as far as being able to work with it. It wasn't really restrictive too much, it didn't look like, other than the $200 deposit. We talked about that, we talked about taking that out. But we think we should leave that $200 deposit in there, and here's why. Because if we were to have to change locks, you know, it would cost us more than $200 to change locks, so that or if we had to go in there and had to either call a locksmith out to let us in at a certain time, we need to be able to have the ability to go in and out of there and change the locks if we need to. So the deposit, that's basically what the deposit was for. We paid for the trash. We put the dumpster there. We paid for the trash. But we asked them for the responsibility of the cleanup. They were, you know, had to provide the cleanup and make sure that the area was clean. But as far as that goes, it looks pretty good. I wouldn't see why anyone wouldn't accept what we had. And a $200 deposit to ask for key deposit is probably not unreasonable.
And that actually happened over there. That was added, excuse me, after some number of years because the town couldn't get the keys back. I mean, it didn't, somehow, I think it had to change the locks. One of the problems, I think, was so many people had keys. The other thing I think they were trying to control was limiting access to the concession stand there in particular. And like there were dozens of keys out, and we could never get control or secure it again, and had to change the locks, and it does cost something to do that. So it was a real thing. It wasn't something we just concocted that somebody thought of it. It was added because it became a problem.
We pay for
So good.
electricity too, correct? The town does.
One more?
We pay for
Yes,
electricity too.
we're paying for electricity too. And that's why I don't think there's gonna be a big problem, you know, with complaining about that, because we just need to know after August 1st, go in there, get the refrigerator unplugged, cleaned out, make sure that the air conditioner's off, and make sure that there's no lure for anyone to go in there and break in necessarily. You know, if it's known that it's empty and there's nothing in there, then it's probably, the risk is not worth the reward. But anyway, appreciate, it was last minute kind of thing. We really, hammered it out within 2-3 days, and we'll get that at the league, and I think that it's pretty amenable for everybody. I think it looks like a good contract, and it's certainly something that if we want to build on, we can build on.
And I think it protects both sides in it, so I think that's important. It's not just protecting us, it also protects them and makes it clear what everybody's responsibilities are here.
And I think, Jeff mentioning the contract dates, when was it, till August 1st?
Yeah, to August 1st.
But, and I'm not, and I just want to make this clear, that I'm not, I doubt if anybody else is too, and I don't want the ball league to think it, but sometimes they'll have a fall tournament or something like that, which we could probably just have just a weekend contract or something like, they're not shut off by no means, or do I want them shut off by no means? That's just the regular little youth league session is what this is based around, but, if they want to have one of those tournaments, which obviously it's your guys' decision, but I sure don't want to prevent them from doing that, to have something like that, if they want to have something like that. But
And that wasn't the purpose of that.
Right, exactly.
We
Yeah,
can change that
Yeah.
and make that flexible, after a period of time, and maybe do an after a season contract, something simple, something quick. We're in there for a weekend, and we will do this. And that might even be something that would be something that we'd look at down the road. But, in that contract, it talks about, we want those people to be fiscally responsible. So it does require them to show that they're fiscally responsible and what, where that money's going. And because we don't want, such as the electricity, to give them permission to do some of these things, and then all of a sudden, we get somebody knocking on our door and say, hey, we got a bill here, who's paying this bill? So it just outlines its protection, like Courtney said, for both sides, which it's needed, and I thought it was really a good thing. Just quick rundown on our monthly report. We had a total of 71 law calls. All the calls total 103 in the month of March. Wrote 7 state statutes, 14 warnings, and 5 crash reports. We had 4 criminal arrests, and I think all of those, I'm pretty sure all of those were warrant from another agency. They were generated from a traffic stop or whatever. The reserves put in a total of 76.8 hours. I got a really good comment on our 2 newest reserves that we just put on last month. They were out Friday night riding, well, one of them was finishing up, had been with me all day, and then he was still here when Ryan came in, and then one of the other boys came in, so I had him come up, bring him up to the gas pump, show him how to fill the car up and how to get in and put their identification in the gas pump. Well, and then to log into the computer. Brown County only had one guy working. He was down south in the county, and they were asking for some help on Horntown Road. So they had to go over and tackle one of the local residents over there and get him under control. And Ryan came in today, and he was really bragging him up how well they responded to that. And then they wasn't able to clear that call, and then they got a call. There was a family fight going on at Brownies that involved fisticuffs, and so they ended up down Brownies, and and Ryan called me about 6:30 and told me if I was going to keep up, he was calling me back out. So they were really busy, and the boys did really good. So he said Ryan's exact words were, "I think we've got a couple of really good ones here." So I'm really pleased with the way those guys are coming along. The Easter egg hunt, we assisted in the traffic. One of the new reserves came out, brought his family, and allowed them to participate in the Easter egg hunt. And then he assisted Jeff with the traffic, with the parking, and just make sure that everybody had some safe crossings, and everything went well. And from what I understand, other than it was a little chilly, things went well. The purchase of the 2018 police vehicle, Ryan has it. The paperwork is in from Ford at Andy Moore Ford. I need to go up and pick it up, and then I'll do Jeff's and do our license plate applications. We'll do it all at the same time. I'll run it up to B&B and drop it off. And normally we have the plates back within 3 or 4 days. So I think everything, maybe within except for one little thing, has been turned in to Sharon. And I was really pleased with what we were able to get this year, and the vehicle, the way that I think we got more equipment and a little more equipment on the vehicle, and for just a few more dollars. And so I was really pleased with the way the new vehicle turned out, and Ryan has too. Update on the computers. I talked to Chad, and we had asked Chad to give us a quote on computers, new computers for the departments. DPW, Town Hall, Police Department. So in discussion with Mike, I think was involved in this, maybe Penny might have been a little bit involved in this. Chad gave us a quote, and you all have a quote. Actually, there's 2 pieces of paper there, and one total is a little different than the other one, but the second quote includes some software or something. Hold on a second. It includes something that the front quote didn't include. And last week when I talked to Chad, the first page includes it. It's the antivirus. The antivirus, so he's including the software for the antivirus in each, for all of it together, was $99. So that first quote that says January 26th of 2018 is $99.99 higher than the other quote that he had left out the antivirus on the second quote. The second quote expired March 28th of this year. However, in a conversation with Chad, he felt like that they would probably honor that if you would decide to go ahead and approve this purchase. I do know that one of our computers has an old monitor, And in fact, the computer that the guys use mostly, it just will not run a lot of our programs that we need for all electronic recording and the things that we need to do. It just won't support it. My computer gets worked a lot, and I have to leave it pretty much unlocked and open to everybody, which is fine. I don't have a big problem with that, but it's like 3 or 4 of us are working off of one computer, and that can get kind of crowded sometimes. So that's why I believe at this time that we probably have the oldest computers of anyone, and I believe it's time for an upgrade.
Well, I'm very much for that, and their stuff is so slow and beyond me anyway, but Jeff has stepped way out trying to help with us away from his basic criteria of his job, and I appreciate that. It's really helped us out a lot. And I think it's important if we're going to work in an eggshell of an office like we got, at least we need to have some decent equipment to do it. And so I think it's very important that we okay this and get this coming for them. Also, Sharon's going to call some people where we have bought our copier, or at least our copier. And it's just about to give up the ghost as well, I think. But it would work, I think, if we could go ahead and eventually, after she gets prices and talk to them, and we can look at the prices of everything. Maybe lease a different copy or a new one, and we could send the old one out of the office back to the police department. And they don't have to be running in and out rain and stuff to come up and make copies. And I think that very works well for us, because it's ours now. I mean, it's our old copy.
And our fax machine, we just got chewed out by the FBI because they couldn't read something that we sent them. And I think this copy machine can fax, and it's a better production. And so it's a Band-Aid, but it's a good Band-Aid for us to have, you know. And so it's not that we're complaining about that machine. I probably use that copy machine as much as you guys do from time to time, because I use it a lot. And I don't like to print off those little ones because ink is expensive, and it takes as much ink on those or more, and the cartridges aren't any cheaper. So anyway,
So these are 2 different quotes?
those are basically, they were obtained 2 different times. I think this January 26th one, because was at one meeting, we asked him just to throw a quote out there for us, and then we asked him, I think in February, to give us another quote. So what it was the quote, and we can always add the antivirus. You know, that's probably not a big deal on that January quote to include that in. I just think that if we wanted to go with one of the quotes, I was just explaining the difference in it. The second quote would be February 26th to March 28th, and that was probably the most recent quote and would be the most honorable quote for them to go by.
And these computers will be paid out of the CCI fund, which has $11,760.28. We haven't had new computers since, I think, 2012 was when we got computers in the town hall, new computers, and that's when we got the copier as well. So we've had them all this time.
I don't know, mine's older than that, but just add this like probably Jeff, and then mine doesn't do anything, but I'm sure that town halls is on really borrow time.
So we need a motion to accept these prices tonight and get these on order.
Would we need to confirm that that's still available? Since it technically...
Chad said that they would honor that.
Okay.
In a conversation I had with him, I think Thursday, because I told him I would present it to the board.
One of the things I really like about this is he's right there, right around the corner. And he can help us with it. Always come and check them out, look at it, and everything is the same thing. It's not split up equipment, you know, it just, everything's a plus, I think.
Now, they've got room in them to expand or put different programs in them, or?
Yeah, all the specs were on another sheet, but that was like 5 more pages of stuff as far as the specs go.
I just didn't know if they,
Yeah.
needed a new program or not.
No, they would, he's quoting them to have memory and plenty of room in there for everything that we would need to run the town.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Okay. The park committee has met, we've met 2 times, or maybe 3 times since the last board meeting. And all of you have a packet that starts out with like Sycamore Street Park. Did you not get one, Courtney?
No. You trying to hide it from me?
Did you get the computer one?
I got it from mine.
Oh, I'll get you.
Okay.
But anyway, we've met, and that's where, on our agenda, that was some of where the Little League information was generated from. But we were looking at the 2 locations after Lee and got our ordinance through to accept both locations as a park. And so we were talking about that with the gateway signs that we have for the town that are going to be put up this summer, this spring, this summer. We were looking at signs, and last pages of after you get by page 4, we were looking at page 4. You got page 4. But we were looking at some of the signs and just kind of looking at what would be nice to put for, to identify it as a town park. So I guess the first 3 pages, we were looking and take this sign, turn it this way, and then put something on there like the one here at Sycamore Street. And we were just, these aren't names are set in stone, these are just ideas that were kicked around by the committee. We might call that the Sycamore Street Park, where the basketball courts are and the grassy area. And then it also would have small, really small letters on there having the ordinance number. Having the ordinance number on there. So that's just to identify, basically just to identify the park. And also in that discussion, we were looking at, especially at the way Sycamore Street is with all the grass, might be a good place to put a walking path in, and also to put one of the pet waste with the little bags, and then to where and then have a trash container nearby there. But a pet waste bag dispenser and something where people can actually go. Because I will tell you this, last year when we had our camera down at the park down where the baseball diamonds are, I was shocked to see how many people on Saturday morning came down there and walked their dogs. Probably no fewer than 4 or 5 families that were down there, and they'd walk around the ball diamonds and walk around in different places. And so, you know, if we wanted to develop something like a path around this place, and I would start out with gravel, you know, around where the dogs could go around, and then, you know, hopefully eventually blacktop it and do some upgrades to that. But that area would be a good place for people to walk their pets, and they could take other kids out. They could take They could take their kids out there and also be doing other activities.
The other can be something
Okay.
But anyway, these were just ideas that we talked about at on the committee, and the different things that might be available to help identify those, and thought it might be a good idea to identify each location with a sign that's consistent with the theme of our gateway signs that we're putting out. So those were just ideas kicked around. We talked about this one maybe like naming it Sycamore Street, and Jeff thought the other one might be Old Town Park. But since we were naming this one Sycamore Street, and I was on the computer there, well, how about Grant Street Park? You know, we got them both identified as Grant Street Park and Sycamore Street Park. You should be able to find Grant Street on the map and Sycamore Street on the map if you're looking for the park. So, but the name, these are just suggestions. If someone, you know, I think that it's just a great idea to identify it with a sign. And then I think when people are driving around, a lot of houses for sale around here. You know, there's a lot of houses for sale. People can identify with a place to take their animals and have some recreation, and take their kids and have recreation. And where there are some, it's clearly identified and there are clear rules. And I didn't even get in on the rules, but that same meeting, we discussed what rules to include on a separate sign, on more of a highway type sign, the park hours, what is prohibited, what is allowed, what's not allowed. And so we've got a complete list of those that I can boil down. I just thought it was a little too much to present at this particular time. I guess I'm not asking for, at this time, on behalf of the committee, I'm not asking anybody to take a vote on these signs. It's just that if we have another meeting or two and we boil down some more information, we'll get you some totals, and then we'll bring that information back to you, and then you can vote on how you want to identify the parks.
If anybody has any, we were talking about the public, if they have any, think of any names for the park, you know, be sure to let Sharon or Becky know. Always.
Right, it's awesome.
Well, I think this too, and I was just talking to Johnny back here. When we met with Christie, help me out, Gerald, on this one thing, we were talking about our letters of support, and I think that if we could get a good picture of all the kids, the number of kids that play on Morton Street, you know, and I drove up through there the other day, and there's all the sidewalk chalk and everything, which is neat. I really think it was really nice that you can feel like the kids can go out in the street and play, but I also would like for everyone to feel like they can let the kids go to the park and play as well, and have some decent equipment there, and you know, get some of the early stuff out of the way, as far as establishing the ordinances, establishing the rules, establishing the name of the park, and then we can go in there and show the grant people that here's what we've got, and we're moving on this. It's not that we're sitting back just waiting for the money to come rolling in. We're actually moving on this, and I think it would be good in all behalf of the town to show them that we're invested in this. So anyway, thanks to the committee, and thanks to everyone that had a little input on that.
On that note, like Jeff was saying, we keep saying the kids on Grant Street, Morton Street, down in that area. Actually, this weekend, the gentleman done the wiring and stuff on my truck, which lives over here on Pine, said that when I dropped the truck off Friday, it looked like a playground area. He said, boy, I wish they'd do something to get some stuff over here on Sycamore Street so these kids they could have a new playground. I just explained to him, I said, well, we are actually working on that, but we're doing baby steps. We gotta get the Old Town Original Park fixed first, but yeah, hopefully this year we'll have something up there too. So yeah, there's definitely some interest there. On both areas.
In lieu of
That would be
yeah,
used.
I'm very much with you on that. We have children play in our street all the time. It's a blast to watch them, what they do, what they can come up with. But, Joe's little boy ride a bike on a hind wheel all the way up the block. turn the block and then come back. And I can just imagine, when I was little, the things that we came up with to play with, to just have fun. But if I can be part of, if we can be part of creating these parks for these kids, then we need to do that. Put everything in there that they would, we think would fit. And, so, I think all of us, all the town, all of us needs to be involved in this, and get this going.
There is one thing I'd like to publicly thank John Joe and his wife for the push that they put on Duke Energy. It's unbelievable sometimes the power that the public can have on getting something done. I mean, we were working one crash after another after Sheldon tore that building down, and then all of a sudden it looked like a mushroom that popped up, and it was a utility pole. And everybody, they couldn't get around it. They seemed to run into it all the time. And it was just because it was a visual thing that they were seeing past that, what building used to be there, it looked open, and they'd turn the wheel and run right into the pole. And it was in the street. But there's still some poles in the street that they did the best they could. Duke moved it, and I think they did a nice job with that. And I appreciate it was because of the efforts of what Andy's wife had done. And along with that, we're talking about, we're going to have one more meeting before the parade, but I've asked Suzanne Gordon, who was very helpful on our cleanup day, because, you know, I see this parade and it'd be nice to have kids involved in something, and we've got some kids that are showing up for cleanup day and are participating and working and volunteering their time and being good citizens, and so my idea was that they needed to be recognized somehow. And so that I was going to get with Suzanne and Jewel to see if they would be interested in taking my folder and calling a lot of the people and getting kids maybe to show up for the Memorial Day or Memorial Parade, and they can wear their cleanup t-shirts from, if they weren't there and last year, they could wear the one from the year before and wear those, and I think we can get a banner pretty cheap. I saw that sign that was made for $20, and I'll be happy to give $20 to the kids to carry a sign that says clean up, you know, the clean up kids. And I just think that we give them an opportunity to march in that parade and give them some purpose too, that's something to look forward to, and maybe do a little recognition at the same time. Because I know we had some pictures, some people have taken some pictures of both groups from the 2 years, and that would be nice to maybe even incorporate those pictures on that banner or something. Have all the kids sign it. Have all the kids sign it. We can put it in town hall. And you know, something that, you know, there's a lot of things that could be done that the kid would be interested in. And then if we decide a little earlier this year about a cleanup day and when we're going to have it, I would like to see those kids design the shirt this year themselves. And then we vote on the design and maybe do a $100 certificate toward books, school books, or art supplies, or whatever that we could, you know, deem necessary. And I've done that before at the Lake Monroe Sailing Association, and it went really well. And you know, the kids can identify that shirt. I designed that shirt. Right? The shirt that everybody's wearing, I designed that shirt. And so I think that it'd be a good opportunity for them to do that as well.
Thank you.
You ready for me again?
We're hoping we're done with it.
Got something else?
Well, Jesse's here.
Yeah.
What do you got, Penny?
All right, I just looked at my information about the pension fund meeting we had. I guess I can just go right ahead. We had it on March 21st, and let's see, Jeff Connors and Decker, and we had down here, and you want to
Swank is there.
Swank.
Or what you talking about?
I don't think you were. But anyway, Edward Jones and Employee Benefits Consulting, they're kind of work together. They're coming up with a something fee
and that'll help with volunteering to keep people. And Sharon, you said something about which fund could we've got enough, pay a certain, so many,
We talked about instead of paying a percentage, we would just give an employee at the end of the year so much from the town to put in there. But of course, it would go directly into the fund. And the employee would have the opportunity to have money deducted from their check each week.
so once we get everything worked out, we'll have, her name's Mickey, and she said she'd be happy to come down and explain everything to us and see if we want to do it. That's all I have, Jeffrey.
You want me to follow up with just a little bit on that? There was two options on that, like a 457 and then a deferred compensation type of fund. And she said that she could work, she's worked with a lot of different size of departments and towns and whatever. And the thing with like the 457, it's something that an employee could take with them to another location and continue to build on. And so it would just be, it's just something, a benefit, a small benefit, but yet a benefit that at some point in time later in life, 20, 30 years later, could pay off pretty big.
I'd like to present to you now as Mr. Jesse Jones.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
You too.
Just tell a little bit about myself.
Yes, this is the council, starting right here with Courtney, Penny, myself, Greg, and Walter.
Nice to meet you all.
You too.
I'm 31 years old. I live in Trafalgar. Graduated from Indian Creek High School. After high school, I started worked at Bobcat Vindy for 6 years almost. Kind of started as a washer guy, went into a mechanic, then I went to running the rental department. When the economy tanked, I kind of got laid off there, so ended up at Bargersville Utilities. Been there for 8 years. Was recently released and looking to come here to work for you guys.
And I stated he brings nice credentials.
I have a wastewater license, class 2 through IDEM, so I can run the wastewater plant. I have 2 kids at home, one's 9 and one's 5, and that's pretty much it. My wife, she works at Johnson Memorial Hospital,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
for the immediate care.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. He has 2 dogs.
Yeah, I have 2 dogs.
And a bird.
And a bird.
So you feel like after listening to Jeff, and then we interviewed, and we discussed so many different things, you feel like you can concur with all?
Absolutely. I feel like I can meet the needs of the town. I feel like we kind of fit, what I'm wanting and what the town's needing, kind of fit together. So I'm definitely still interested.
Guys, yes, this isn't a wastewater operator position. This is a wear all hats position.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've done everything at Bargersville, all the way from plowing snow, street department stuff, patching roads. Started out mowing, doing stuff like that. I've been on the water crew, fixed water leaks. I have been on the wastewater department. I even helped, we had an electric department at one time. They subbed it out now, but help the electric department once in a while also.
We have some cold, muddy situations sometimes in the wintertime.
Absolutely, water leaks can get nasty.
How's they
And I'm
do?
usually in Florida when that happens.
They just call it coming out last night.
Not anymore.
In Bargersville, they pay traffic each department.
Sabotage things, all that.
Okay, council, do you want to make a decision tonight, or you want to discuss this? Is everybody cool, everybody on the same page?
Yeah.
So who would make a motion to hire Mr. Jones?
I'll make a motion to hire Mr. Jones.
Second,
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
welcome aboard.
Thank you.
I appreciate it. I want $2 an hour. Okay. Good to have you. I think we're down to our attorney.
Now, I have an ordinance to pass around. This is kind of hard to explain, it's sort of a technicality, but the town already has what's called a cumulative capital development fund. It is a fund that allows local jurisdictions like Morgantown to collect a little additional revenue based on the assessed valuation of property in town. The town's had this for some time. Somehow or another, what happens year after year is when there's this effect that the Department of Local Government Finance calls trending. And the way I understand it is when you establish this fund, you have a tax rate on the assessed value of the property in town. But when they calculate it, they fix a number that you collect each year based on the product of those two, the rate times the assessed value. But as the assessed value starts to increase, the number that they set it at originally stays fixed, but the increase in assessed value isn't being captured because the tax rate isn't being applied to it. It effectively is a reduction in your rate because you're actually backing into the equation. And so what DLGF recommends, and in fact requires, if we want to keep the number up, is you have to reestablish the rate. The highest rate is a nickel per $100 of assessed value. That's what we are at now. We may stay there for the next 2 or 3 years, depending on whether our assessed valuation goes up around the town. What we've seen though since 2008, when everything dropped so dramatically, is the assessed valuation's been creeping back up. I don't know from town to town, in Morgantown in particular, how significant that is. But when I came to understand that you lose the rate over time, I just made it a habit every year to reestablish it. And I actually talked with Ryan Burke, his name, today. He's our DLGF rep from Morgantown, and I explained to him, I had him explain to me again how this works, and I'm relaying to you what he said. I think he would say, well, not all towns, in fact, not very many do it every year, because you don't know whether you're losing that much revenue anyway. But I said, well, what's the downside for it? He said, well, there isn't one. I guess we have to run an ad in the paper. That our total advertising cost might be $100 or something like that. I don't have any question that we're recouping that money every year by reestablishing the rate. So I just consider it a bit of housekeeping that you do every year to make sure that you're capturing as much revenue as you can and you're not sliding away as some of the parts move. So that's what it's about. We did it last year. I think we did it the year before, and I plan to do it again next year. But this is simply reestablishing the rate at the maximum, which is 0.05 cents per $100 of assessed value, which is exactly what it was last year and the year before and the year before that. Is that enough explanation? So what I would ask is that you just adopt it, and I need for you to adopt it and suspend the rules because we have to get it to DLGF by the end of April in order for it to have that effect. And before acting on it, we also scheduled a public hearing on this tonight. So we need to call the public hearing to order, ask if anyone has a comment on the reestablishment of the rate for the development fund in the town. Any public comment?
We're listening, you keep going.
Okay. If there's no public comment, then we would close the public hearing, and if it makes sense to you, then I'd ask you to go ahead and adopt the ordinance as presented. Do you know what number this is, any chance?
This is the one that we just went from 2% to 5%.
No, it was 5 last year. It starts out at 0.17, then 0.017, 0.033, then 0.05, but we've been at 0.05 for several years now. So it does graduate up, but we've been there and left. So this just holds it level.
Okay.
It's
So we need to go through
2018-5, isn't it?
Well,
According to that,
I'll take your word for it.
what is it? I looked at it on the paper. Mike,
The park was 4.
Okay.
The park
so
ordinance
this
was
is-
4.
This is 5.
This is fine, okay, thank you. So it'd be 2018-5.
Okay. So we need to make a resolution to start off.
Just a motion to adopt
Motion for
2018-5. 2018-5.
2018-5. Need a motion for that, to adopt that.
I'll make a motion to adopt it.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
And then,
And then we need a motion to adopt it on second, a motion to suspend the rules and adopt it on second and final reading tonight.
so now we need a motion to adopt that, same, 2000. On the second reading, need a motion?
I'll make a motion to suspend the rule and adopt ordinance 2018-5.
Need a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks, I'll get it to DLG right away, and that'll take care of this for this year. The next thing I'm sending around is the resolution to amend the personnel manual on our social media policy. And I made some changes and sent it out to some of you, those who have the email. Do you have an email address?
Sharon got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she got it anyway.
Okay. I can get it and send things directly if need be, but
I'll find out right down
We-
there.
we talked about this at the last meeting. There was support for it. There was some concern about it. I tried to sort of remember and synthesize everything that everybody said and tried to just make changes that I thought might make it more acceptable to the council as a whole. And so this is just me taking a crack at it. And I don't know whether it's at a point where it's all right with you or not, but I think it moved it in a direction that may make it more acceptable, but I just need to know what your comments are and don't need to act on it tonight. But I feel as strongly about it as I did when I brought it. I think we need to have a social media policy. I think all employers really do. Good heavens, we've seen in the last, since our last meeting, some of the risks of social media. And I know we're not talking about that, but social media has been in the news quite a little bit. So anyway, I encourage you to stay with this and to get a policy in place. If you like the way it is tonight, there's a resolution here you can act on. If you say, well, we've got it now and we need to study it some more, then let's get it on our agenda for the next meeting.
I have read through it, and those that have read through it have made comments, and they think it's a very good one, very clear. Not any major changes.
I think there are some changes, and I think it does make it clear, and I still stick to it. I don't necessarily agree with you that if it's not broken, don't fix it. But in this form here, I think it comes across as less, it's more clear, so it's less restrictive in that way. The last one, I think, was a little bit, could be interpreted to be extremely restrictive, and I think this makes a lot of clarification on some of the concerns that I had last time.
Has the council read through it?
Yeah, I read it. I don't have a problem with it.
Does the council want to make a move on this tonight?
Let's get it done.
I need a motion.
I make a motion to accept this.
It's actually a resolution 2018-3.
I need a second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and we don't need to adopt this once because it's a resolution. We're not actually making any local law or changing any. It simply is an administrative policy. What I'll do is work with, I'll get to Sharon or Becky. I've already prepared this. A notice to our employees that this is now being inserted in the employee manual so that they all have it, and an acknowledgement that they've gotten delivery of it. The business personnel policy is if you ever want to enforce it, you got to prove that the employee's got it. And so we want to be able to do that, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Then the status on our cable facilities. Man, I told you this before, we've got a fella, we're working with, it's been real responsive, and I think it's gonna get done for us what we want. He's still trying to get a contractor lined up to remove everything that we have told him we don't want. Jeff had mentioned at our last meeting that he thought those antenna towers would be good for the town to keep. This guy's delighted. I mean, the thing that was holding him up more than anything else was getting a contractor who could come in and remove those, and when I told him we'd like to keep them, that made this task a lot easier for him. So I look, within the next few weeks, I think they're gonna get in here. Weather's not been great, he had contractor back out on him. If I call him, he calls me back. I really believe they're gonna get this out of our way here real soon. But I got it on my calendar to come up about every week, and so I'm gonna keep pestering him, so our wheel squeaks as loud as we can make it squeak. But I think that's gonna work out okay. 29 West Washington Street, we've had it on the agenda the last couple of meetings. I don't know whether you want to talk about it tonight or at a place where you want to make a decision, but I just don't want it to get lost.
One thing we have done, I asked those to order a sign for sale, and we can either do that, or we can put it up for bid again, or we can try any other.
Yeah.
We just can't.
I think if we're going to offer it for sale, we've got to go through some of the statutory procedures. We can't just put a sign out. Our options, one option would be to offer it at an auction, like all of us are used to. We could retain an auctioneer if you would want. There's going to be some commission to be paid, but an auctioneer would advertise it. We get more advertising, I think more effective advertising than what we can get by running an ad in the paper. We can list it with a broker. I don't know what will work best. I guess I would prefer to see you try it with an auctioneer, because I think the total commission would be less. But that would all be something that would be negotiated. If you had a broker or an auctioneer, I think we would try to negotiate with them to get the best commission that we could. But we've already tried the course of advertising in the paper like the statute requires. The only people who are interested were the ones that learned about it through word of mouth anyway.
Right.
Folks just reading the paper, you have to do that, but that's not how municipal property gets sold. It gets sold because people find out about it somehow. And if we could figure out another way to do that, that'd be great. But like I say, I just want to keep it in front of you, that's all.
Does the council have a comment on their opinion on what we should do at this point? We'll just,
Keep it on the agenda, okay. And then I wanted to say, I thought of this when Jeff was talking, just along the lines of good things that are happening. Princess Lakes is going to have a community cleanup day. I think I mentioned this to you before, but they have been organizing it, and I think it's coming up here in the spring or early summer or something. But Jeff provided them with sort of a template and gave them some good ideas, and I think some actual written materials on how it was done here. And when they started complaining about the community not looking very good, I actually said to them, well, here's what Morgantown did. And that's what kind of sparked their interest in having a cleanup day. And I kind of turned them on to Jeff without asking him first, I don't think. But what's happened here is neighboring communities have communicated with one another, and Morgantown set a good model and had a good experience doing what it did, because Princess Lakes will want to copy that.
cool.
And I don't know. I think that's great when it happens. It doesn't happen as much as it ought to, but it did here. And I want all of you to know that your town marshal has been a really good ambassador for Morgantown. And you're not at their meetings, but they're expressing a lot of appreciation in their meetings about how Morgantown's been of help to them, and Jeff in particular. And I just want you to know that. It's good, yeah, but you don't have the benefit of hearing it because you don't go to those meetings, and so I just wanted to relay that back. And I don't know, I guess things like that may breed more things like that. And the idea of getting the kids invested, get them involved in their community by putting them out in front of the public and getting them their t-shirts and stuff like that, I mean, that's a great idea. So, just wanted you to know that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If there's not any further with us, I'd like to open the floor to public comment.
Public comment?
Sure.
I believe it's you.
How's everybody doing?
How many's up?
Everybody knows me except for the new hire. My name's Paul Dinkins. I'm a big solid sales in the town.
Can I approach?
Looks like it's disappearing. I've been saving my money to try to expand my business. I want to present this idea to the council and ask thoughts, maybe advice on which way to go. This gentleman is my brother, my law stepbrother, and my advisor, and my business partner. I just want his money.
He just wants my money.
And he's got it and I don't.
Looks like he's in your office helping too.
Somebody ran it on you.
He's doing a lot of speaking.
I only have one.
I'm trying to expand our floor plan, and it's all there listed.
All right, so everybody's aware of Paul's business. Think Dink is Dink's Auto Sales. I drafted this just to go over it, if you don't mind following along with us to the town council. It's a revised business layout. You know, the business is basically migrating from an auto sales to a recovery business. I think you're aware he's got wreckers, he's got the rollbacks, he's got the different recovery vehicles. He's been working with GMG and working throughout the county here, recovering vehicles. So right now his facility, because auto sales has basically gone away, going away, needs to be reconfigured. In order to reconfigure it so it operates properly, it needs to migrate to a recovery business. So therefore, the background, as our business has migrated from buying and selling of automobiles, we're seeking the council's authorization to revise the existing footprint, change the yard layout so it's conducive to a towing and recovery business instead. Physical construction, in order to facilitate the business, we've attached a proposed layout. How we intend to invest in the lot. The legend at the top shows the proposed area. So if you go to the third page, if you'd like to.
That's okay.
Mike,
I'm not interrupting, I don't mean to be rude, but what you're gonna request here as a matter of consideration would be something the plan commission would have to do, not the town council. If it turned out to be a rezoning or something, it would ultimately come here. But the change in layout or use would be a function of, the approval would be a function of the Plan Commission or the Board of Zoning Appeals.
And we do have those on site.
Yeah, we do. And so like I say, I'm not meaning, and if Mike, if you would decide you want to hear the presentation, go ahead. But ultimately, what you're asking for in the way of some permission or something, the council can't give.
I'm here for guidance.
So,
You're right.
so and with that being said, it's your meeting, not mine. I just want to make sure everybody understands what the division of responsibility and authority is.
Say what you just said, but I mean, this is planning and zoning, this is not us. But there is some things, yes, that the council would look at, and, you know, the condition of things and stuff like that, with the properties and stuff, with just anything to trying to fix up the town, so we just want to make sure everything's going the way it should be. So, I think at this point, you probably need to, would get you a meeting set up with the planning and zoning board.
How do we set up that meeting?
We have a meeting scheduled for Thursday night. I don't know if it's been canceled. But Thursday, I believe, is the regular council meeting then.
You told me no.
Is
And
it
there's-
the second Thursday of the month, ain't it?
That's the schedule, but the president's out of town,
Oh,
so
that's-
Who's the president?
my husband.
Oh, is there a vice?
Hmm.
Or vice president?
We ain't had a meeting this year.
I know, that's what I was wondering, when did they?
Well, we had a meeting January actually to establish the president, but he was the president left over from last year. So he'll be the president until we assign one at our first meeting this year. Which we ain't had yet.
Says in the bylaws they can only miss miss 3 meetings and then we have to get rid of them, I think we ought to get rid of all of them, because ain't none of them coming to meetings.
There ain't nothing in the bylaws that says we shouldn't have a meeting every month.
No, and you've not had enough meetings, but I don't see anything wrong with coming together to listen to his presentation.
Right,
Yeah.
and what I need to do is call the members, we pick a date, which normally would be the second Thursday, and then I have to call and make sure we have a quorum, because if there's not enough members, they can hear it, but no action can
No
be
action.
taken.
Well, and I'm not sure there's any action that can be taken on this anyway, but the only thing the planning commission can do with regard to zoning ordinance is interpret it. So, if there's some question about whether the ordinance applies in a certain way, the planning commission can interpret it to give meaning to the various provisions or development standards in the ordinance. If you're looking to do something that the ordinance doesn't permit, then you would have to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals for that. And so it would be fine if the planning commission is so inclined to let you come and make the presentation I think you intended to make tonight to them, to offer the guidance like you say you're looking for, with our, typically our zoning administrator or zoning inspector is there, and you could get some feedback from the members, and then we could actually take a look at the ordinance to see how it applies. I'm trying to fumble around here and look at it a little bit right now, and I don't know that I can find it under these circumstances to see whether a recovery service is something that is included in the ordinance or not. But certainly it seems to me if you're wanting to make a presentation to a committee of the town, that would be the one you would make it
So
to.
is the question, you're asking whether, obviously, we can't do it, but for the zoning, commission, your question would be whether or not this is permitted, and that you could be allowed to move
It's
forward?
already zoned as a business right
Right.
now. So it's just migrating from one to the other, but because it's a vehicle storage facility, Indiana Code 22 requires certain things for a vehicle storage facility. Therefore, a vehicle storage facility has to have a 9-foot high fence. It has to be a solid metal fence for privacy, it has to be lockable. So that's on page 3, the blue one. We wanted to ask the council, because you're trying to fix up the town and make it beautiful. Since it's on Route 252 as you're heading out, and on the right-hand side, and we put up a 9-foot fence along the highway. What color do you want? Are you all right with it? And it says right in the proposal, you pick the color, we'll put up a green one, we'll put up a red one, we'll put up a red, white, and blue one, whatever you want. And in conjunction with that, next to the existing building that he's got, which says Dean's Auto Sales right now, there needs to be a garage in order to take recovered vehicles and put them in and work on them or anything that needs to be done. So a 4-bay garage expanded to the facility, but that's away from the public view, it's farther out in the lot, and all that's shown on this. It doesn't need to be zoned from one commercial to another. It doesn't need to be zoned from a public housing or anything to commercial. It's already a commercial business facility. It's a migration of what the business is to ensure that we meet the beautification and physical security standards and the vehicle storage facility standards for the state of Indiana. And the town has no problems with it. I don't want to invest the money and then find out we didn't want that.
What's it zoned now?
We rezoned it.
I remember.
Strict question, commercial, it's auto sales.
I know, but I don't see under any zoning classification where a recovery service like that is currently a permitted use in Oregon. So it's not, you keep calling it a migration of use. It's a matter of whether the use you're proposing is something that the ordinance contemplates or not. The only thing we have in here is called a junkyard, and it's not permitted under any zoning classification.
It's not going to be a junkyard.
I'm just saying the only use we have that comes close to the storage of vehicles is our defined use called that. And as I look through the ordinance, I don't see under any zoning classification where a recovery yard is a permitted use. So,
Sounds like they do need to.
yeah, or it would have to be a variance. And so, I mean, I can look at it more closely. Like I say, if the planning commission can convene a meeting, you can come there. But I'm trying to remember, it's not an industrial use, it is commercial as I recall when we rezoned it. And I think it's the highest, I think it was C2, right?
C2.
And so when we look at C2, it's everything permitted in C1, and light manufacturing, wholesaling, warehousing, transportation uses, which would be research uses, essential services, office uses. And then the following uses are permitted as conditional uses. And it's an automobile service station, automobile repair shop, commercial garage, or retail sales establishment. And I don't think what you're describing fits any of those descriptions, any of those definitions.
Certainly what you would call warehousing.
It's not warehousing.
Vehicle.
It's not warehousing. Now, if you want to come and ask to do what you want to do, that's fine, and the town might let you. But we're going to have to call it what it is.
Right.
And it's certainly not that. So, but I don't know that you can't get there. I just don't think there is a zoning classification under the current ordinance that lists the use you're describing as a permitted use without having to win some additional approvals. As I look at it, trying to fumble through the response to getting this, on the table tonight in the middle of a council meeting. So I may be overlooking something trying to do it this fast. And I'm happy to talk with you, just after having a little more time to look and pointing you to what I think is relevant, so you can agree or disagree with it. We can certainly talk about it outside of the meeting, if that's helpful.
Perfectly fine. Again, like Paul said, he just needs to get guidance of exactly what needs to be done, so it can be turned into a towing and recovery operation,
Okay.
which is what it's currently being used for.
And a car lot, no burger in there. I got a few myself. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mind if we keep these?
Absolutely.
More than welcome.
Sit there and say you're operating that already with that permission.
Thank you.
Our next council meeting is Monday, May the 14th, 2018 at 6 o'clock. I call this meeting adjourned.